So one of my favorite panels that I got a chance to see this past week at Comic-Con was a panel called The Science Behind Rick and Morty. I don't know if any of you are fans of Rick and Morty out there. And one of the things I love about Rick and Morty is they do kind of a slightly different thing when it comes to time travel. Instead of, because once you start pulling a thread on like time travel narratives, it really can fall apart really quickly. But so instead of doing time travel, they take this scientific idea about the idea of infinite universes. So if you are a student or a fan of like string theory and quantum theory, quantum mechanics, you know that there is a theory out there that says that there are an infinite number of universes that occur each and every time we make a decision. And every time we make a decision, a new universe is created. Now think about 7 billion people on the planet Earth, each one of us making 7 billion decisions every day, and that gives you an idea why it's called infinite universes. And I really like the idea of a multiverse or an infinite universe model for reality, because it means that for me at least, it's very comforting, the idea that there are things that that has happened to me in the past, or choices I have made in the past, that the very opposite thing has occurred. So there is a universe out there in which I got into Northwestern, which would have been nice, because it was the one rejection letter that I got when I was applying to college, and it was the one college I really wanted to go to. That means there is a universe out there that I didn't go into the ministry, but instead I went into politics, and I'm the governor of Texas today. What? That means there's a universe out there which meant that I didn't give up on my guitar lessons, which means that I'm the front man for a really kicking butt like rock band, which kind of keeps the same hours as a minister, which that's good. And there is a universe out there which meant that I didn't go into history or political science or philosophy, but I went into physics and mathematics, and that I'm now an astrophysicist, and I get to explain to you what a multiverse is. I really like the idea that there are all these other little universes, and there's obviously infinitely more, but there are also, those seem pretty innocuous, but there are also other universes in which the hard things that have happened to me or the bad things that I have done to people, those things don't exist. So there's a universe out there in which on my 16th birthday, I didn't make my mother cry because she didn't get me the gift that I didn't want. She gave me a gift that I didn't want. I wasn't the jerky 16-year-old, overly hormonal teenager who was a jerk to his mom. I like the idea that that universe that universe exists. There is a universe out there in which my grandfather didn't contract and come down with Alzheimer's, and that he didn't die at the age of 78, and that he and my grandmother are now still living at age 92, and that they'll live for another decade together. And there's a universe out there in which my very good friend Rob didn't contract HIV and AIDS, and that I didn't have to nurse him at the very end of his life, and that I wouldn't to this day miss him. He would still be alive. I like the idea that those universes out there exist, and maybe you have universes in your own life that you would be so comforted to know that they are happening and they exist, and that you would be comforted by that idea. So I have a great deal of faith and a great deal of trust and belief in the idea of an infinite number of universes, even though there's no proof beyond just some scientific and mathematical models that kind of prove that they exist. So that means that we only have one reality, and that reality is this reality, which means that we don't get to discard the bad things that we've done to people. We don't get to not experience the traumatic and tragic things that have happened to us. It also means that all those triumphs that we've had in our lives and people have championed things for us, those exist as well, and they shape us and change us and evolve us and help us grow. This is the only reality we have. And there's a great deal of comfort in that for me as well. So it means that because we don't get to escape or go around or circumvent the things that have happened to our lives, that means we have to deal with them. Which I'm sad to say that that's the truth of things, but we have to deal with them. And sometimes we deal with them better than others, but sometimes we don't deal with them at all. And it's when we don't deal with them in any way, shape, or form in a healthy way that they can kind of eat us from the inside out. Or maybe a better word for that is possess us. There are events in your life, there are things that have happened to you, there are things that you have done to others that can possess us and not let us go, and they can take over, and they can paralyze us and hurt us and cause us not to be able to move forward in any sort of healthy way. So as you can imagine, I do not have much of a demonology. In fact, if I was just going to be truthful with you, I don't believe in demons at all. I figure everything that's in the Bible that actually is called in the first century a demon is actually probably something else like a mental illness or an emotional distress or something like that. I don't have much of a demonology at all. But that being said, I have a great deal of belief in possession. I do believe things can possess us and not let us go, and these things can cause us to feel imprisoned. Not in a prison in terms of a cell with 4 walls and bars and a toilet that doesn't have a toilet seat that everyone watches us whenever we go to the bathroom, but, thanks, I know, right? Like, thanks for that image, Daryl, I really appreciate that. Prison ain't fun. But there is things that can literally chain us down and isolate us in a way that is so much stronger than any chain that a human being can make. So take this man in the graveyard. Think about him for just a moment. How possessed he truly is and the effects of this possession. The man is chained to the ground so that he cannot move, and he has isolated himself in a graveyard. And there are so many levels of isolation in this story. It's almost hard to comprehend how many there are, but let's try. There are so many levels. The first part of the isolation is the fact that he resides in a place of death. And in the first century Jewish world, graveyards were unclean. And anyone who went to a graveyard for anything other than a funeral procession became unclean themselves. So this man is completely isolated from friends and family and community. He cannot go to them, and they cannot go to him. Secondly, he is chained to a gravestone, to the ground. So he has an isolation of movement. He can't see the world around him. He doesn't know what's behind him, and he's just stuck there, constantly looking in the same direction. And then he's naked. He has no clothes on, which means in the first century, that's a metaphor for how dangerous and how vulnerable he is. He is literally in a wild place. He has left civilization. He's went back to the wild. He literally, if you want to use the Genesis 1:1 word, he's literally gone back to chaos. And then finally, he has a demon. Actually, he has many demons. Legion, it says, 6,000 demons, unclean spirits inside of him. And this separates him from his relationship with God. Not that God has broken the relationship with him, but the demons prevent him from going through the wall to get to God. And so he is isolated from God. So he has no relationship with friends, no relationship with family, no relationship with community, and no relationship with God in this story. That's how isolated he is. And how many times have we felt that way when we have been possessed by something in our lives which will not let us go? We are isolated from family, friends, community, and God. And the Dementors in the clip from Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban are very much a physical representation and manifestation of what is happening spiritually inside the man who's living in the graveyard, and socially who's living in the graveyard. The Dementors are literally legion. We only saw one, which was a representation from a boggart, but later on in the Prisoner of Azkaban, you can see thousands of Dementors circling Hogwarts and the magical world of Harry Potter. And they prey on us. They prey on us, and they possess us, and they trap us, and they imprison us in an endless feedback loop of the shame and anger and anxiety and depression and fear that goes on inside of us. They do not physically chain people. It's actually brilliant. Azkaban has no bars. It's all open air. But because you are paralyzed by your fear and your anger and your depression, they don't need bars. They are bound there infinitely by the powerful Dementors which hold them in that place. But Dementors, as though they are very powerful, and they have a grip that is incredibly strong, And their appetite for our fears and our anxieties and our depression and our isolation is hard to satiate. There is a charm which can beat them back. There is something that can protect us and remove the dementors from our purview. And did you notice what that was? Not the words of the charm, but what did the charm look like? Light. Beautiful, powerful, immaculate, sacred light literally beats back the fear and the anxiety that can possess us and imprison us. It goes back to Genesis 1:1. The man who's in the graveyard has left civilization, is back into chaos, and what's the very first thing that God does in Genesis 1:1 when God encounters the chaos? What's he do? Give me light. The first thing God does to remove the chaos is to illuminate it with the light of God's divine and sacred love. And for us to call upon that light inside of us, Professor Lupin tells us there's only one thing we need to do, which is come up with a memory, a happy memory. He says a very happy memory that is deep down inside. And it can't be something that's light or lightweight. It has to be deep. It can't just be flying on a broomstick, though if you flew on a broomstick, oh my goodness, that would be like amazing, right? No, it has to be strong and powerful. It has to be a good memory, a good moment, a good experience that is rooted in faith and hope and love and joy. I think if Professor Lupin could say it all over again, he'd say not a happy memory, but a joyful memory. Do you have such a memory?
Yes.
Do you have such a memory? Yes. Close your eyes. Allow yourself to recall your most joyful memory. Do you picture it in your head, in your heart, in your spirit? Allow it to fill you up. Because that memory is a gift of God's grace for you, that you can call upon any time to bring forth God's light into your life. Notice the memory that Harry Potter says that he chooses was not a happy memory per se, but it is a memory full of joy and love. He sees his parents, he says, in the mirror of Arise, and he'd never seen his parents before. They died when he was just a little baby. So he had no idea what his parents looked like. His aunt and uncle had never shown him a picture. So the dementors, they escalate his fears to a point that Harry literally loses himself. He becomes unconscious. He no longer knows his consciousness. He falls asleep. He faints. He becomes unconscious. He literally loses himself. He loses his identity. But the memory that Harry recalls that brings forth the light of the Patronus spell is so powerful that it's the one where Harry Potter finally figures out and finally discovers that he's not the nobody kid that his aunt and uncle said that he was, that lives underneath the stairs in the closet. He's not even the boy who lived, the legendary mythological boy. He is the son of James and Lily Potter. Harry Potter finally discovers his true identity. And it's the happiest moment of his life to know who he truly is. The man in the graveyard is possessed so overwhelmingly by these demons and unclean spirits that when Jesus asks him his name, the man cannot even say his own name. He has no identity. And Jesus gives it back to him and says, I know exactly who you are. You are a son of God. My friend Andrew King, who is a poet and a minister in Maine, wrote a poem called I Am Legion. I am the lost one trapped in depression. I am the broken one trapped in my rage. I am the hurting soul chained to addiction. I am the self-harmer abused by young age. I am the many-named victims of madness, my humanness naked, nowhere to hide, drowning like flotsam in cold seas of sadness, wrecked by despair until bits of me die. haunted by fear or strange inner voices, tormented by dark thoughts and pitiless ties. Blame me, shame me, and what other choices? Fear me, ignore me, and let my needs slide. Gerasene, brother, when you met the Christ who banished the illness into the swine, your healing came without judgment or price. Mercy itself helped bring back your rightness of mind. But note still the fear of those who kept score. Finding you clothed, sitting calm and at peace, madness is feared, but mercy is feared more. It's Christ, not Legion, who is asked there to leave. This past week, we celebrated the birthday of one of the 20th and early 21st century's greatest humans, Nelson Mandela. If Mandela had been alive this past July 18th, he would have turned 99 years old. As Mandela wrote in his autobiography, on the day that he left prison, which he had been in for 27 years, much of that in solitary confinement, Nelson Mandela wrote these words: "As I walked towards the light shining through the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in that prison." We don't get to go to a multiverse, sisters and brothers. I'm sorry to say that. Where we are able to sidestep, negate, or just completely go around all the things that have happened in our lives. Unfortunately, we are called upon to deal with them. But the good news this day is that we don't deal with them alone. There is a light that shines forth on us to protect us from our personal dementors that would have us fall into hopelessness. And there's a light of love that shines upon us that will cast out our own personal demons. And that light is the light of God's love. And we call upon it every time we draw upon that sacred memory of that deep, joyful moment that we've all experienced. That is a gift of God's grace for all of us that we can recall to bring forth the light, to shine, to protect ourselves, and to shield others from the dementors and demons of this world. So recall that memory and know God's love this day so that you can shine forth your own Patronus spell and shine God's light in your life and in this world. Say it, expecto Patronus. I am a daughter. I am a son of God. Expecto Patronus. In God's kingdom, no one is a nobody because everybody is a somebody. Expecto Patronus. No dementor or demon will possess me all the days of my life. I can overcome it all with God's help. Expecto Patronus. God's light guides our feet, and God's light shines in our life, and in our heart, and in our soul. Expecto Patronus. And even when we breathe our last, God's light shines us forth so that we may see and be with God in paradise. Expecto Patronus. God's light shines this day on you, on you, on you, and on you. And God willing, on me too. Amen and amen.